Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. Happy December 15th. Smokey's hanging around here, so I'll try to get her in the camera at least once today. Let's start with our chocolate advent calendar. The boxes are a bit squished because Smokey was stepping on it while the doors were open a few days ago. So number 15 is pretty dented, but that's okay. That won't affect the chocolate. Got a little bell here. Let's see what it is. I'm gonna guess dark chocolate because it's the cookies and cream flavor, my favorite. Okay, I'm looking forward to giving that to eating that after this video. On to the story. Here was today's number 15. Oh, have you come to say hello, Smokey? So it was called The Journal by Ken Liu. And before I started reading it, I read the author bio on the back, which was pretty long. Smokey. And it basically talks about how many science fiction and fantasy awards he's won. So immediately I'm like, okay, this is going to be a story that has at least some elements of the fantastical in it. I was correct. Oh God, cat hair. It's a problem with having a long-haired cat. It's about a wife who's cleaning the house because that's what all wives do. We just sit around and clean. And she comes across her husband's kind of private journal that she didn't even really know existed. And she knows she shouldn't look in it, so she just kind of briefly flips through it just to see what she can see very quickly. And she just catches a few words, but nothing really, important. So she just puts it down and tries to forget about it. But immediately after that, every time she tries to read something, the words literally slide down the page or jump off of the paper completely. So she can't read anything after she's looked at this journal. And at first she thinks, that it's not just her, so she shows her husband and her son, and they laugh at her because they're like, there's nothing wrong with this, you're just stressed. She goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, I'm not the kind of doctor that you need to see. So she kind of goes home and decides she's just going to deal with it for the next few weeks. Take a few weeks off work and see what she can do. No, Smokey, don't do that. So this story was really interesting to me because, it's very short, for one. It's only like 11 pages. And it does kind of come across as like science fiction a bit. Obviously, there's text jumping off a page. But to me, it was a horror story because I honestly couldn't imagine anything worse than not being able to read. And, I felt almost like panic building up inside of me at this woman's state because it just was like a nightmare. Just reading about it for me. And the more I thought about it, I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe if I was in that situation, I would resort to audiobooks, which, wasn't addressed in this book because it is only 11 pages, but that kind of made me feel a bit better. And in the end, things are sort of resolved when it comes to the journal and that sort of thing. So she does regain her sense of reading back, I guess. But I went onto the Hingston and Olsen website to see the author interview for today. And Ken Liu talks about the fact that this story is actually about relationships and what happens when communication breaks down in relationships. And the idea of the words coming off the page was more so just a metaphor of how like far apart that the husband and wife had come in their lives together and that they don't really understand each other anymore. So that made me laugh because obviously I read into it a bit differently. But when, once I read that about what he said, I thought, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense that, that was kind of the underlying theme that her and her husband's marriage had not fallen apart by any means, but they had drifted apart. So I just think that today's story is a really great example of how reading the author's intentions about the writing can completely change the way that you see a story and the way that you think about a story. And so I run a book club, and every time at the end of our meetings after we've thoroughly discussed a book, we all agree that if we could ask the author questions directly, it would change the way that we potentially see the writing. So people that, hate the book, maybe because they don't understand a certain character's intentions, if they could ask the author why they wrote the book that way, they might even begin liking the book because they understand why things were done a certain way. Which seems kind of strange, but I completely understand it. And honestly, reading the author interview about this short story didn't change the way I felt about it. I mean, I liked it as I was reading it after I got over my initial panic of not being able to read. But now I think I like it even more because his interview really revealed, all these layers to the story that I was just kind of not necessarily ignoring, but just couldn't see through my panic of not being able to read. So anyways, there's my review for today. Smokey is... Here's Smokey. Come say goodbye, Smokey. I know everyone just wants to see her anyways. Say bye. Bye, Smokey. And we will speak with you tomorrow on December 16th. Bye.